Welcome to the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast, your go-to place for approachable conversations around sacred sexuality and conscious relationships. I'm your host, Janine McKinnon, certified trauma-informed sex, love, and relationship coach who's on a mission to support 1 million women and couples to experience deeper connection and more expansive pleasure inside and outside the bedroom. This is the space to go deep, to dive below surface level relationships and mess sex and explore the sacredness that sexuality and conscious relationships have to offer. Because deep connection, spiritual sexuality, full body orgasms, and transmuted sexual energy are available to everyone. And I'm here to serve the collective, to provide the knowledge, wisdom, and tools to access them. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another Tuesday transmission episode inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. And if you don't already know, I am a huge proponent of long-term happy relationships and marriages. I think there's really something special to going through life side by side with your best friend, with someone who is there to support you through the good and the bad, who is there to grow with, to witness you, to cheer you on, and to really create life together, to create family, community, businesses, so many different things. And to be able to do that side by side with your best friend is a really beautiful thing. And when I was at the health trade show a couple of weekends ago, this couple walked up to my booth and we got chatting, and they mentioned that they've been together for 33 years. And I could tell just how they were interacting with each other. Like, they were happy and comfortable in their marriage. They were supported and connected with each other. And so I asked them, what's the secret to 33 years of happy marriage? And so that's what this podcast is all about, is sharing those 3 secrets that they shared with me. And then I am also going to relate them into the bedroom, into sexuality, because they really do go hand in hand, incorporating these keys in your relationship through that like loving relationship way, as well as within your sexuality, for that a sexy, fun component to your relationship as well. So that's what we are going to be moving through in this episode. And I'm excited because I feel like there's a lot of talk, especially lately, around sex and orgasms, and that's what people generally come to me about, is to really ignite that spark within them, to use their sexual energy in a way that's more than just sex with their partner, for them to be able to really experience those waves of pleasure and all of those fun things. And for me, my big why of doing that is so we can experience this for ourselves and within those long-term relationship containers, and to be able to share this with someone and to be able to grow in this realm together. Because sexuality is such a vulnerable subject. And so when you're able to have that growth with yourself and with another person, to be witnessed in that, to have these vulnerable conversations together, to be able to have these pleasurable, fun, expansive experiences together, that deepens your connection in such a beautiful way that is really hard to replicate in other ways. And yes, we can have that deep connection through going through the hard times, which I think is another really beautiful part of long-term relationships and marriages. Is, for me, some of my favorite parts of my marriages are actually the low parts, because it showed us how we're able to really be there for each other, to move through these tough things together. And as much as that's really beautiful and a part that I really like and appreciate, when it comes to the sexuality and pleasure side, there's this whole element of pleasure and fun and exploration that you just don't tend to get in other realms of your relationship in the same way. And so that's why it is just so fun to be able to play around with this and then also experience the deep, deep connection and more expansive pleasure. So before we get into those 3 keys for a happy and sexy marriage, I want to tell you about a live embodiment journey I have coming up at the end of the month. It is the last Wednesday of every month. So this one comes up on Wednesday, February 26th from 12 to 1 Pacific time. And it is all about the connection with your emotions, because the connection you have with your emotions and sensations is directly related with your pleasure capacity. Your pleasure capacity is essentially the capacity, the ceiling for which you feel safe and comfortable feeling and experiencing. And that includes the full range of emotions and sensations and experiences. And I think most people in today's culture push through to stay on the positive side and the light side. And that's okay. I'm feeling tired or sad, but I'm going to keep chugging along and find the silver lining in this and find my happiness and joy in the day. And although I understand it, I am a huge optimist. I'm someone who always is looking for the silver lining in situations. That said, it gets to a point where we are bypassing and we're limiting ourselves with the amount of joy and pleasure we can experience because we're avoiding experiencing our darkness, our sadness, our grief, our anger, our shame. And all of these are a part of the human experience. And the more we can create safety in feeling our darkness, allowing that sadness, that grief, that anger, and that shame to move through us, the more we're able to actually expand our pleasure capacity and feel all of the good feelings in a greater way as well. If we limit ourselves in one area, it's going to limit ourselves in the other. And sadness, grief, anger, shame, these things aren't bad emotions. I personally believe no emotion is bad, but the avoidance or the ruminating and dwelling in any emotions isn't necessarily a good thing. And when we can learn to be with our emotions, to feel them and experience them to their fullest, they actually tend to move through quite quickly. And with that, we are able to have a full human experience. I believe we are spiritual beings here for a human experience, and that is feeling the emotions and the sensations. And the more we can create that safety to feel all of the things, to feel safe in our anger, in our rage, in our sadness, as well as our happiness and joy and wild pleasure, the more we're able to continuously expand our pleasure capacity more and more as we're able to hold all of this, which are really parts of the wild feminine. So that is the inspiration for this month's embodiment journey, which is beyond the positive, feeling it all for true liberation. And it is a by donation, pay what feels aligned, anywhere from $5 to $50. And it is a sneak peek of some of the practices inside the Unapologetic Practices collection. So if you are someone who tends to keep pushing through to focus on the positive or perhaps numbs out in some different ways, I really invite you to join us for this live embodiment journey, to have a safe container and a process that really walks you through feeling your darkness and feeling safe and okay to do so, and then moving through it in an empowered way. So I would love to see you there. And now I will get back to the juiciness of this week's episode. So the 3 keys to a happy and sexy marriage are honest and open communication, self-responsibility, and accepting for each other for who they are. So let's dig into that honest and open communication, because I truly believe that it is absolutely key, as this is about keys, but it really is such an important pillar for support and connection within your relationship. You can't feel connected and supported when the communication isn't there. You also don't have the tools to really support and connect with each other if your communication isn't there. We need to be able to talk about our celebrations, our wins, and yes, what's going on in our day-to-day, as well as we need to be able to communicate the tough parts, what we need from each other, how we need support, how we're feeling about things. What kind of adjustments can we make to our relationship and to our household to be able to really thrive together in our relationship? And I feel like that is what has really been that strong center of my marriage, is our communication. We decided very early on that no matter what, we will focus on our communication. We will talk about things. We won't allow things to bottle up and then explode, because chances are you're going to talk about these things at one point or another. So doesn't it make sense to talk about it sooner, before emotions are supercharged, before resentment builds, and just be able to be on the same team? Hey, this is what's going on for me. What do you think? How can we solve this problem together? And so if you would like some tips for how to communicate with your partner effectively, I have a whole podcast episode on that, with different ways to really come from that team standpoint rather than battling against each other, because that is, again, that beauty of those long-term relationships, is that you are together as a team moving through life and creating life together. Now, as this applies to sexuality, communication is incredibly important. Yet I find it is a huge missing piece in many people's sexual sides of their relationships. And a big part of that is a lack of confidence, a lack of knowledge of their own body and what they desire. It is also that sexuality is such a vulnerable topic, so we get a lot more emotionally charged. We're more likely to get reactive or defensive because we are so vulnerable and our feelings are so just up beneath the surface. And so it can be tricky for a lot of people. And at the same time, being able to communicate when it comes to your sexuality and pleasure is going to really build that deep connection between you. And when you can get to a point that you can talk freely and openly and supportive about your sexuality, it's like no problem to talk about how you need support in the household, because it's just on a whole other playing field. So if you've got it down when it comes to the vulnerable inside the bedroom things, it's going to have that ripple effect and just strengthening your communication in all areas of your relationship. And so it really takes both people being willing to have these vulnerable conversations. And it's important because you can't just expect each other to read each other's minds, especially if you are in a heterosexual relationship. Like, our bodies work so differently. Our minds work so differently. It's how we're hardwired. It's how our hormones affect us. And we cannot expect the other person to just know how to do things. I actually find a lot of my clients kind of put their pleasure on their partner, and it's almost as if they're expecting them to read their mind or just know what to do. And at the same time, they don't really know what they like. They might know how to get themselves off with their go-to clit sucker or vibrator, but they don't really know what their body craves, what it needs to really open up to pleasure, what sensations really feel good when you slow things down and connect with another person. And so that takes practice. That's what the Unapologetic Practices collection is all about. That's what Ignite is all about, is learning what do you really like. I'm here to tell you about my upcoming group program, Ignite. It's a juicy creation that takes a holistic approach to igniting a more expansive relationship with your pleasure and sexuality, one that feels personal, empowered, and fun. I've had the honor of guiding many one-on-one clients through this process this past year, and I'm ready to make it more accessible for you through a group format. Moving through the taboo of sexuality in a deeply transformative way is no joke, and I've carefully curated this space to ensure you have the support and accountability you need while moving through this beautiful process. If you feel like there's more to your sexuality and pleasure than what you're currently experiencing, I would love to guide you through my process that actually increases your pleasure capacity in a real and lasting way, so you can experience the type of deep connection and expansive waves of pleasure no toy or new position can produce. You can get on the wait list through the link in the show notes to receive all of the information for when we're ready to begin in March. How can you set yourself up for a beautiful experience of pleasure by understanding your roadmap to pleasure? And then once you know that, once you have that understanding with yourself, you can begin to communicate it with your partner in a positive way and be able to deepen your connection and expand your pleasure together. So open and honest communication, absolutely key inside and outside the bedroom. That brings us to our next key, which is self-responsibility. The particular couple that I chatted with talked about how they are each responsible for their own happiness, that they don't just rely on the other person to make them happy. And I feel like, again, that translates into many different aspects of our relationships. Yes, we are responsible for our happiness, and we're responsible for bringing our all into our relationship. I believe it was Brene Brown who said 50-50 is a joke. It's not 50-50. It's about us each bringing in 100 and 100, while also knowing we're not always going to be at 100 all the time. Sometimes our going all in is more like a 40, and we're going to rely on our other partner to really support us and bring as much as they can, which is going to be a lot higher of a number. And so how much we're able to put into our relationship is going to vary and change from the day to day. But what is important is that we bring our all, whatever that level is, into our relationship. We're responsible for our happiness. We are responsible for how we operate within the household, as well as how we support each other. And when we really feed into our own happiness, what brings us joy, we have more to give into the relationship. And so it's really important that we take that responsibility on for ourselves. And so that often means making space for your hobbies, for doing different things that you love, taking time for yourself outside of the household, or perhaps it's something that is like more hobby-based, something you can do on the computer, having your own time and space to be able to do that outside of the relationship, outside of the family unit. And that actually leaves room for desire. Esther Perel talks about this in her book, Mating for Captivity, in that when we each have our own separateness and something that is just for ourselves, whether that's our hobbies or social interactions or whatever it is, it leaves more space for desire, for eroticism, because there's some mystery there, there's some separateness there. When couples are completely enmeshed and do absolutely everything together all the time, often that desire actually fizzles out. And so that's where having this separateness actually leaves space for desire, for wanting. And I've seen this in my own marriage. I feel like at the beginning we kind of combined together in a lot of ways, did everything together, and then lost ourselves in parenthood. And we had to really begin to focus on ourselves as individuals and as a couple. And the more we became responsible for our own happiness, so for me, it was exploring a lot more hobbies and taking time to really care for myself and doing those weekly date nights for myself that I talk about all the time. And for my husband, it was for him really being able to create space for working out and for exercise, because it is so important for his physical and mental health, as well as going off and doing different guy things and pursuing some of his interests and creating space for more of the podcasts and video game time and different things like that he likes, while keeping it separate. That's one thing I see a lot of couples kind of coexist together while doing their own thing. I find it this really odd behavior that is very common behavior, and it's where both people will be on the couch and say, for example, the husband is playing video games and the wife is scrolling on her phone or doing something on her computer, and they're both together on the couch, yet they're in completely different worlds. And it's like this enmeshment, well, also this enmeshment that feels isolated. And so what I encourage people to do is to just separate and then bring in some intentional relationship time. So my husband and I, Friday and Saturday nights are couple time. We also have regular monthly date nights where we go out. Maybe we go out for dinner, work out together at the gym, go to a concert, do different events and things like that. But outside of that, every Friday and Saturday are couple nights. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're doing anything extravagant. A lot of the time it means we're watching a show together, but we're cuddling together, talking about the show together, and we're very present with each other for those moments. And then Sunday to Thursday, we're doing our own thing. We're not like enmeshed yet isolated doing the own thing on the couch. We're totally different. We're in different spaces of the house doing what lights us up. For my husband, often it is video games. He likes his different games and I have zero interest in that. And so I will do my different hobbies, my different practices, working with the jade egg and things like that. And so we have our space for separateness. We are taking on self-responsibility for what makes us happy, and we are prioritizing the relationship and connecting and supporting each other. And so that is really important. And it touches on something that Dr. Sarah, I'm so bad at pronouncing her name, Nazarzadeh, talks about in Love by Design. I recently heard her conversation on Layla Martin's podcast, my mentor, and I really loved their conversation and went and purchased Dr. Sarah's book on Audible right away. And she talks about how many couples will go from 1 + 1 = 1. Each partner comes together and creates the couple. And that's what there is. It's the couple. Your identity is as the couple. But what it really is 1 + 1 = 3. It's each of you as individuals, then also coming together in the coupledom. And so you have this separateness, you have your self-responsibility, you have your own sources of happiness, and you have the coupledom. You have where you feel supported and connected. You have the shared vision. And Dr. Sarah goes into these full 6 ingredients for love, which I really love her concept on this. But I just use it as an example of where we are responsible for ourselves, for our happiness, as well as our pleasure, and that feeds the coupledom, that feeds the relationship. And so when it comes to sex, our pleasure is our responsibility. And so I touched on this a little bit in the previous communication part of this episode. We can't expect our partners to read our minds. So what does it mean in taking responsibility for your pleasure? First, again, as I touched on previously in the communication part, is we need to know our own turn-ons and turns off. We need to understand our roadmap to pleasure. And so what this includes that I go over in Ignite is what's our brakes and accelerators, what turns us on and turns us off, and learning to be able to kind of adjust and toggle those so we can really press on the gas and ease up on the brakes at the same time. What are our erotic blueprints? What's that pathway to pleasure? Are we sensual? Are we sexual? Are we kinky or energetic or shapeshifter? They are all very unique. And so understanding your blueprint and how to set yourself up for success goes a long way, while also understanding the shadow side of those things too, and how you can better support yourself and unleash your wild side. You need to understand different holistic sex tools to help you be present with your pleasure, with your sensations and energy and emotions. So all of these things are things that I cover with an Ignite. You're fully set up, understanding your roadmap to pleasure. And then that is your self-responsibility, fully understanding that, and then being able to communicate with your partner around sex. Now, taking responsibility also means doing something with this knowledge, not just learning it all and putting it on your partner to be able to satisfy your needs, even if you're someone who likes to take a more submissive role inside the bedroom. It doesn't mean you're putting everything on your partner. You still have self-responsibility in your pleasure. And so one way that I think is really key, especially if you are someone who likes to be more submissive, I definitely fall in that category, is making space for embodiment practices and self-pleasure. Do you desire to feel confident in your body and empowered in your sexuality? The Honeypot Meditation is a potent 12-minute visualization to support you in connecting with your sexuality and rewiring your subconscious with the confident, radiant energy you'd love to embody. Download completely free through the link in the show notes and get ready to immerse yourself in a visceral experience as you connect with your sensual, radiant essence. That's really being able to create that sense of safety within yourself so you feel safe to surrender and fully let go of that wild, embodied, sexually empowered version of you. That's not just going to happen. It takes practice. It really is a practice. And there's many layers that go into this. That's why Ignite is such a holistic approach. You look at the inner child healing and the shadow work, as well as having kind of those more solid tips and tricks and roadmap to pleasure. And when you have this ongoing practice, creating safety within yourself, to feel all the things, to explore what sensations are like within your body, to train your mind to be very present in the present moment with all of those sensations, that's going to translate into the bedroom with your partner. You can learn through different things inside the Unapologetic Practices collection or Ignite, those holistic sex tools such as breath, sound, and movement, and how you can bring that into the bedroom to ignite your pleasure a little bit more rather than relying on your more dominant partner to please you. You can actually amplify your pleasure while staying in that submissive role. And then also in terms of taking self-responsibility, being responsible for your pleasure inside the relationship, is Could be things like creating date nights, creating sexy date nights where you can explore different things together, and perhaps upgrading your skills too. Maybe you feel very safe and comfortable fully unleashing your wild side, but there's certain things that you're curious about or would like to upgrade your skills on when it comes to squirting or blowjobs or lingam massages or so many different things. And so Beducated is an incredible platform to support you in doing that. Do you want to spice things up in the bedroom but aren't sure where to start? Beducated is your all-in-one sex education platform, providing you the sex education you wish you had, with tasteful and informative courses on everything from intimate connection, blowjobs, yoni massage, kink, BDSM, tantra, and so much more. Beducated has everything you need to spice things up and explore your curiosities as a couple. Follow the link in the show notes or go to JanineMcKinnon.com/Beducated and use code 25 for 25% off. Again, that's JanineMcKinnon.com/Beducated and use code UM25 for 25% off Bedukated's online sex education platform. And so that kind of covers the well-rounded look at being fully responsible in your relationship for your happiness, your joy, and for your pleasure. And when you really take the time to fill up your cup in all those different areas, you have more of you to give. You're more excited and happy to be that supportive partner or to be there for your kids in all of the different ways and show up as the multifaceted woman you are. It really starts with you taking responsibility for your happiness, for your pleasure, for your health, for all of those different ways that you operate and thrive in. So that brings us to our last key to a happy and sexy long-term relationship, and that is to accept each other as they are. You don't try to change each other, and I so loved when that particular couple shared that with me at the health trade show, is that you don't try to change each other. You understand who each other are and you fully accept that. And I think that's really important. A lot of people come together seeing potential, and they see what their partner could be. And I really like to bring people to this question, is if your partner didn't change a single bit, would you still love them? How can you love them exactly as they are, flaws and all? Not thinking about potential or where they're going, just completely as they are. Can you fully love and accept them for that? That is a key. That's foundational. Yes, in conscious relationships, we're continuously evolving and growing. And I do think it's built on that foundation of fully accepting each other as they are. Because also, we're totally flawed people. We have all sorts of baggage and triggers and different shit like that. And so we can't expect our partner to be any different. And so we need to be accepting of that. Just as much as we want grace on when we're cranky or when we get defensive or want to be avoidant or anxious, whatever it is, we need to be willing to give that to our partner and not just try to change it out of them. And so when it comes to sexuality, what that takes is learning what each other likes, not just assuming they like the same things as you. So this is where love languages and erotic blueprints really comes into play, because I feel like without that knowledge and that communication, people often just kind of assume that their partner likes what they like, or you found one particular thing they like, so you just keep doing that thing, totally unaware of all of the other things they enjoy, all of the other pathways to pleasure that they have. And so when you have this openness to meet each other where they're at, you can explore things from a place of curiosity and love. And now when it comes to sexuality, there are some worksheets that I have. They're couples play sheets, and I'm happy to share them with anyone who wants to shoot me a DM or an email to request them. I haven't put together the full email and things like that yet. But essentially, it's this long questionnaire with all of these possible sexual acts of what each as individuals likes. And there's a rating system between don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, open to it. Ooh, I would love to do that. I crave that so deeply. And so you go through all of these different options, kind of rating them. And so the idea behind that is anything where one partner doesn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, that's fine. You don't need to change that in each other. It also doesn't mean that that's fuck no forever. We do continuously evolve, and there's no pressure to change that. We got a full world of things to explore with each other. So let's look at what are the fuck yeses and what are the open to trying these things out. And so you meet each other where they're at and just explore with each other. Again, from that place of openness, of curiosity, and of love and support, having that open communication, taking self-responsibility when you really like something, to share that. When you're really not liking where something's going, to speak up for yourself. Those are equally important. And on that note, don't feel like you need to only do what they like. That's where that self-responsibility piece really comes in. And I see lack of confidence really tends to make this hard, as well as lack of internal safety. Many women are scared of speaking up for themselves for fear of being judged or rejected in various ways. And so when we can look at these shadow pieces, again, this is a big part of my coaching and of Ignite, to be able to create that internal safety, which therefore creates confidence to be able to speak up for ourselves. We feel confident voicing how we don't like something or how we'd like to change something, and we're not as worried about being judged or rejected because we know this is important and we know our partner is going to meet us in that way. And perhaps this is a learning curve. They're not used to this and they don't necessarily react in the best way. Maybe we didn't phrase it the best way. That happens. It's a journey, and we can still feel confident that this is important and this needs to be communicated. And so how can we come back together? How can we work through this? How can we strengthen our communication? And how can we learn to play around in the things we both enjoy or both open to? And so it's really important to take on that self-responsibility and not feel like you need to change yourself as you're accepting your other person, and as you're accepting your partner and wanting to pleasure your partner or to please them in different ways, that we are making sure that we are also being accepted for who we are, and that we are being pleasured and having fun exploring the different things that we really like as well. And so that covers those main 3 keys to 33 years of happy marriage, along with that sexy side of things as well. And so those are honesty and open communication, self-responsibility for happiness and for your pleasure, and accepting each other as they are. I would love to hear what else you would include in this list. What do you think are keys to a long and happy and sexy marriage or relationship? I know for myself, I think connection is a huge piece that kind of morphs amongst those other keys with that communication and that self-responsibility. Knowing that connection is something we need both for ourselves and for a relationship. And so taking the self-responsibility to communicate and prioritize our connection points. And I need to look to see if I've already done a podcast episode on connection or not. And if I haven't, I definitely need to do it because I touch on it in so many different conversations, and there's lots of different kinds of connection that are really important. But I will leave that for another conversation, and I would just love to hear what is important to you in a happy and sexy long-term marriage. What else would you include outside of communication, self-responsibility, and acceptance of each other? So please shoot me an Instagram DM or an email, info@JanineMcKinnon.com. I would love to hear, and I will see you next time. Wishing you a love and pleasure-filled week. Thank you for joining us inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you left us a review to help us reach more women and couples so they can experience deeper connection and more expansive pleasure inside and outside the bedroom too. Until next time, embrace your desire and experience your magic.